I have two questions I would like you to answer. One, do you like Frida Kahlo? And two, if so, can you name any of her paintings off the top of your head without looking anything up? Frida Kahlo has ascended the status of artist and has become a cultural icon. She is a symbol of strength and representation for women, LGBTQ communities, living with and overcoming disabilities, and pride in Latinx and Mexican heritage. Her reach has stretched far beyond the artistic community and into the mainstream, in a way that most artists, no matter how famous or successful, have been able to do. As such, her face is on anything that it can be printed on and sold for at a profit. I started to question the role Kahlo has in the modern zeitgeist because I saw a mug with an artist's interpretation of her image on it, and I wanted it. As someone deeply passionate about art, it is not strange for me to want art historical merch. However, I realized while looking at it that I don't particularly love her art. I appreciate her role in art history and have studied the symbolism behind her paintings and regard her as a great artist, but I would not buy a print of her work for my wall or say she's one of my favorites. So why did I want an image of her face? The commodification of her image has become such an interesting and unique phenomenon that it has been given a name, Frida Mania. Artistic interpretations of Kahlo's face are used as a placeholder for the broad values she represents to people. Many people, myself and my friends included, have been drawn to purchase items because they bear the image of Kahlo. Not the ones created by her or photographs of her, but other people's artistic renditions of her portrait. People reproduce her image at such a massive scale because her image has come to represent much more than herself or her art, to the point where her face is what's known and celebrated, not her work. There is a ton of information about Frida Kahlo that is easily accessible to people, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about her background. As you probably know, she is a painter of German and Mexican descent, born in Mexico in 1907. Kahlo had polio as a child, creating a permanent disability in her leg, and was involved in a traffic accident as a teenager, which caused long-term problems such as infertility. She was engaged in a difficult marriage with fellow artist Diego Rivera, who cheated on her many times but was not accepting of her own extramarital affairs, especially those with women. All through this, Kahlo maintained an aesthetic that championed traditional and indigenous Mexican dress instead of the European styles favored by people at the time, and was heavily involved in politics as a supporter of the Mexican Communist Party. Even without her art, Kahlo is a fascinating woman, and it is no surprise that she resonates with people the way she does. One issue people have with the myth surrounding her life is that people glorify the tragedy she endured. The romanticization of artist suffering is nothing new. Another prominent example of this is Vincent van Gogh and his depression and fragile mental state. The idea of the starving artist suffering through their lives, only finding reprieve through their art, captivates people and makes for a great story. However, the mindset that creativity is directly linked to strife is a dangerous one to have. Yes, many of Kahlo's paintings were centered around the pain she went through, and she did appear to use her art as a coping mechanism for tragedy. However, is it disingenuous or even condescending to say that her suffering is the reason she is so celebrated? She overcame almost every challenge possible, to the point where Vanity Fair called her a politically correct heroine for every wounded minority in 1997. This begs the question, would her art be as highly regarded if she did not live the life that she did? It may surprise you, but Frida Kahlo was relatively unknown until a biography of her life was published in 1983 by the art historian Hayden Herrera, which was later turned into the 2002 Hollywood movie starring Salma Hayek. While the book was highly regarded and well received by people both inside and outside of the academic community, some art scholars had issue with the perceived opinions of the author seeping into the narrative. As is possible when a single piece of work or a single person's research is used to create the entire perception of a person. Said by an art historian to the website artsy.com, but as a Mexican living in the United States and as an art historian, my perspective is that it overdetermines a sort of mainstream, white, feminist interpretation of Kahlo that diminishes the way her work is imbricated in the specificity of Mexican history and politics. You get an understanding of what was happening in Mexico politically and socially, but that understanding is secondary to a very lachrymose psychobiographical representation of Kahlo's pathologies. Zavala, along with many other scholars, believe that too much emphasis on her personal life rather than her art in a way that has not been done for other artists. Now, I'm not saying that the idolization of Frida Kahlo is necessarily a negative thing. While the overwhelming public opinion of Frida Kahlo may influence scholarship or research done on her work, if she is an inspiration to people, they should look up to her. But this begs the question, do people like her art or do people like her life story? Should her status as an icon be included in the analysis of her paintings, or does it hinder the truth? Has all the analysis of her work been swayed by people's opinions of her as a person? These are difficult questions, and I don't think there will ever be a concrete answer, as is the problem with most questions brought up in art history. So now I have one last question for you. Do you like Frida Kahlo as an artist, or do you like her as an icon? And is there a difference?